How much can you do with just a single block of grass in vanilla Minecraft? If we had an otherwise empty world in survival, with no extra items and no extra blocks, could we scavenge together an experience similar to SkyBlock? Kinda. It's complicated though. For a quick comparison, this is what you start with in SkyBlock. There's an island, a tree, and a chest of useful items. From just this basic kit, you can make almost anything you can in normal Minecraft. SkyBlock's starting items are often seen as the fundamental elements of the game, but I think we can do better. Almost all of the blocks and items on the starting island, and the 8 islands surrounding it, can be made from just one piece of grass, though the process is incredibly stupid and no human should ever try it. Okay then, how do we progress from just a single block? Well, we can't interact in any meaningful way with the grass block, so we'll have to rely on mobs for our progression. I'm categorizing the mobs available to us into 3 main groups: passive mobs that spawn during the day, hostile mobs that spawn during nighttime, and biome exclusive mobs that spawn in depending on which biome we're in. Of course, since we only have one block of grass that can't be moved, we'll only choose one biome for our biome exclusive mobs. To spawn in any mob in Minecraft, there are a few technical requirements. The first and most important requirement is that mobs can't spawn while there is a player within 24 blocks of them. For us, this means we'll have to jump off the block every time we want a mob to spawn. This holds for both passive and hostile mobs. Passive mobs also have 2 additional requirements. For a passive mob to spawn, they'll need a light level of 9 or higher, and they can only spawn on a grass block. This shouldn't be a problem for us though, since... yeah. Assuming these conditions are met, any attempted passive mob spawn will have a small chance to succeed. The spawning algorithm for passive mobs runs once every 400 ticks, or 20 seconds. So all we have to do is find the right timing and jump off the block every 20 seconds. Each time we respawn, there might be a passive mob waiting for us when we get back. Most passive mobs will be completely useless to us though, since we can't do much with many of the items they drop. The sheep, however, drops the wall block, which we can use to build stuff. All we have to do is murder the sheep and... oh yeah. Sheep are kinda impossible to kill using just our fists. I've really tried to find an angle that didn't knock them off the block, but I just couldn't do it. So I guess we're stuck at square one. Maybe it is possible to kill sheep, but for now let's assume we can't and move on to the hostile mobs. Hostile mobs probably seem just as simple to spawn in compared to passive mobs. They can spawn in on any block as long as it's dark enough, and their spawn timer is also much faster than passive mobs, running once per tick instead of once every 400 ticks. But there is one big problem that's exclusive to hostile mobs. They'll instantly despawn if there are no players within a 128 block range of them at any time. This is a huge problem for us, since when we walk off the void to let hostile mobs spawn, we'll fall over 200 blocks before the void finally kills us. This assumes the block is at a wire level of 1, which is the best case scenario for dying near the block. So even if we did get a hostile mob to spawn during our fall, it would have despawned by the time we come back. So if we want to spawn in and keep a hostile mob, we need a way of dying before we leave the 128 block radius. The damage from the void is just too slow to kill us from full HP. But what if we were already damaged by the time we got there? The void does its first tick of damage as we reach a wire level of -64. So if we die to that, we should be able to never leave the despawn threshold. But how do we get to low HP before jumping? There are 2 ways of taking damage while on the block. The first being lightning, which... no, that'll take way too long. And the other being starvation. Yay. If we can starve ourselves down to 2 hearts before jumping, we should be able to die to the first tick of void damage. But since we're on just one block, starvation is going to be a little annoying to pull off. Losing hunger in Minecraft is accelerated by various actions, like sprinting, jumping, and taking damage. Unfortunately, we can't do many of these things, so we'll have to stick with jumping in one spot to starve ourselves. I tested it out, and it took a little more than 20 minutes before running out of hunger. Then, if we tick down to just 2 hearts, we should be able to jump off the block and die as we hit y equals -64. Any hostile mobs that spawned on the way down should be waiting for us as we respawn. Alright, let's talk about how we deal with these hostile mobs. Some mobs just aren't worth dealing with now, but what about the ones that drop useful stuff? We obviously can't punch them off the blocks since we want their loot. We also need to be careful about them knocking us into the void, since we'll probably form more than 128 blocks and despawn them. So how do we get the hostile mobs to safely drop their loot? Yep, we use the sun. Since the sun doesn't apply a knockback effect when it deals damage, it's a perfect way for us to kill mobs safely and get their drops. It does only work on zombies and skeletons, but that should be enough to get us going. All we have to do is starve ourselves down to 2 hearts, jump off the block at the end of night, respawn on the block, survive until the sun comes up and then does enough damage to tick them down to 1 HP, and then punch them once to secure the rare drops. We punch the enemy once because if they die without us ever dealing damage to them, we'll miss out on their rare drops. Both the skeleton and the zombie have some super useful rare drops. From the skeleton comes the bow and arrow, which we can use to kill other mobs and get their drops. Some passive mobs can be killed in just a single powered up shot, meaning we can finally get wool. We just need to remember to drop the items onto the block before we jump off. Then there's the zombie, that drops another 2 useful items, those being the iron ingot and the iron shovel. If we somehow manage to get 2 iron ingots, we can craft some shears that let us harvest 1 to 3 wool from a sheep, but only once per sheep. If we let a sheep regrow their wool by eating the grass block, we'll no longer be able to spawn in passive mobs, which really sucks. The other useful item dropped by zombies is the shovel, which is great for one purpose. Guess again. There we go. Digging up snow with a shovel, and not your fist, will drop a snowball. Craft 4 snowballs together, and you can make a snow block. Snow is much easier to mass produce than wool, but it does require us to be in a snowy biome, and we'll talk more about which biome we're in when we get to biome exclusive mobs. So now we have access to wool and maybe snow. It doesn't matter which block we use. What really matters is that we now have access to an infinitely renewable source of blocks. With these new blocks, we can expand out the platform and make our lives a whole lot easier. We can do stuff like create dedicated hostile mob spawning areas, or bridge out to reach new biomes. Just by having these new blocks, our potential to play the game grows exponentially. But as far as our progression cares, all that really matters is that we can kill any mob, passive or hostile, and get their full set of drops. And there are some cool things we can get to drop from mobs, like iron and glowstone, but none of that is really transformative. We'll need to think of something else to get us to the next level of progression. Introducing the biome exclusive mobs. Somewhere in here is our ticket to the next level of progression. But, of course, our grass block can only live in one of these biomes. So which one? Try and figure it out for yourself, but just keep in mind that the answer is completely stupid. Okay, if you guessed the taiga, you're correct. But if you guessed the snowy tundra, you're even more correct. Both of these biomes are home to the only mob that matters in our sad one block existence, the fox. Foxes don't drop anything useful on their own, but they do have a very small chance of spawning with an emerald in their mouth. We can trade these emeralds with a wandering trader to get a whole range of cool items that'll be essential for our progression. The problem is, it can take a while to get emeralds to drop. Foxes have a 20% chance of holding an item in their mouth when they spawn. Of these items, the emerald occupies a 5% chance of appearing. This means there's a 1% chance that a fox will spawn with an emerald in its mouth. Also, foxes are just one of the many passive mobs that can spawn in the tundra or taiga biomes. In both cases, foxes account for 2/15 of all the passive mob spawns. That means there's a 1 in 750 chance that a spawned in passive mob will be a fox with an emerald. To put that into perspective, let's assume that it takes 10 minutes to spawn a passive mob using the methods described earlier. As foxes account for 2/15 of passive mobs, it would take 75 minutes to spawn a fox. To get a fox with an item in its mouth, a 20% chance, it would take 375 minutes. Then, for the 1% chance of an emerald, that's 7,500 minutes, or 125 hours. Okay, that's a long time to be playing Minecraft for just a single emerald, but I mean, Kurt J-Mac has been walking to the far lands in an update before sprinting was even introduced, so maybe it's not that ridiculous. But that 125 hours assumes we can spawn a passive mob once every 10 minutes. If you've ever tried to spawn in passive mobs, you'll know that it can take way longer than that. So how long should we expect it to take when spawning in a passive mob on a single block of grass? I ran a little simulation to test just this. Using the carpet mod, I was able to simulate 4 million ticks of a Minecraft world, or around 55.5 hours. During the simulation, every mob that spawned was automatically killed and their info was logged into the chat. To maximize the spawn rate of passive mobs, I surrounded the grass block with 16 blocks of snow in each horizontal direction. And for 90% of my time making this video, I didn't think that non-grass blocks surrounding the grass would make a difference, but here I am reworking this entire section because the difference it makes is absolutely huge. Over the 4 million ticks, a total of 154 passive mobs spawned in, excluding the chickens, which can spawn in alongside hostile mobs. If we then scaled this number back to include the chickens again, we get 197 passive mobs, so around 1 passive mob per 17 minutes. For comparison, when I tested the grass block with nothing surrounding it, it took around 23 hours to spawn in a single mob. So in theory, the rate that passive mobs spawn in should range somewhere between 23 hours and 17 minutes per passive mob, depending on how many blocks are surrounding the grass. So if we take the 17 minute per passive mob number and put it back into our time calculations, we should expect to see an emerald once every 212 hours. Still kind of ridiculous, but we haven't left the realms of possibility just yet. Anyway, assuming we did take the time to get these emeralds, how would we use them? I briefly mentioned the Wandering Trader, so let's quickly cover them. Wandering Traders have a chance to spawn in once per around 20 minutes, through a system unlike any other mob in the game. For what it matters, 5 Wandering Traders spawned in during our 4 million tick simulation, so that should give you some idea. There are so many useful trades offered by the Wandering Trader, so let's just focus on the 2 items that'll help us the most: saplings and podzol. Finally, we have a way of getting wood and making a huge breakthrough. But let's not rush into buying and planting the sapling right away, because if we were to grow a tree on our 1 grass block, it would convert it into dirt, which is not good, since we still need to spawn in passive mobs. There are 2 possible methods of solving this problem though. The simple option is to just buy podzol before getting the saplings. Having the extra podzol also means it's safe to let sheep regrow, and we can properly farm their wool. In theory, having these extra blocks of podzol should also increase the passive mob spawn rate, but in my testing I found no signs of an actual difference. I tested different placements of the podzol, such as adjacent to the grass, separated by a chunk, and separated by a larger distance. I really thought that having the extra podzol would increase the spawn rate, and maybe I just couldn't figure out how to do it in my testing. But anyway, that was option 1, buying the podzol first. The second option is to buy the sapling first, but to also have 2 pigs stored somewhere in your base beforehand. Doing this means you'll lose the grass block forever, but there is a method of getting podzol later on. I don't want to spoil how the pigs work into this process just yet, but it should make sense soon enough. So yeah, how long will it take to save up the emeralds for each of these methods? For the podzol first route, which requires 8 emeralds, it should take around 1,696 hours, or 71 days. As for the sapling first route, which requires 5 emeralds, it should take around 1,060 hours. Of course, these are the ideal times based on a best case scenario simulation where the grass block is surrounded by a lot of other blocks. It also assumes that we play the game perfectly without ever making a mistake, and there's so much we can do to screw it up. There could be a creeper incident, or a clueless sheep could eat the grass block just after spawning, or maybe some emeralds get knocked off the map since we don't have any storage. I think you get the idea. No person should ever try to do any of the stuff we've been through so far. Sure, that makes everything in this video so far useless, but I think proving that it's possible is cool enough. And there's still so much more we can do, because yeah, we finally have wood. Having wood really opens the door to... Wait. Hold on. Okay. Having wood really opens the door to so many important features of Minecraft. Things like having tools, storing items in chests, and being able to sleep at night. Access to the full crafting table also means an explosion of new items available to us. There's too many recipes to cover, but some cool highlights include redstone lamps, minecarts with tracks, and hoppers. Then there's the cauldron that collects water during the rain. This gives us access to growing crops for food and fishing. A few cool things can be got through fishing, but the most important one might be the enchanted books, meaning we can finally make fully enchanted tools and armor. Our potential has really opened up, and we still have so much further to progress. Some of our future progression could come from the Wandering Trader again. So many useful trades are still available, but our current method for finding emeralds is kinda slow. So let's instead jump to probably the coolest thing we can get from our 1 block. Full-on villager trading. Since we can't just go out and find a village, We'll have to make one ourselves by curing zombie villagers. In normal Minecraft, we'd cure a zombie villager by throwing a splash potion of weakness at it, and then right-clicking it with a golden apple. But there are some problems for us. Crafting a brewing station is normally pretty simple, but we don't have cobblestone. And worse yet, we can't go into the nether to find blaze rods. We also can't trade to get a brewing stand, so how do we make a splash potion of weakness? Well, we don't. Instead, we'll be tricking a witch into applying the weakness effect for us. Witches can throw 4 different splash potions at the player, one of them being the weakness potion. All we have to do is stand near our zombie villager friend and have the splash potion hit the villager too. But what about the golden apple? None of the mobs that we've seen so far drop gold, and we can't trade for it either. Luckily, one of the strangest mechanics in the game is to our rescue. Oh yeah, pigs that get struck by lightning will turn into zombified piglins that drop gold on death. So all we have to do is coat every exposed surface of our base in pigs, and we're good to go. We can even use carrots to breed the pigs, since carrots drop sometimes from zombies, and can be farmed using bone meal. Once we've had a few nice lightning storms and got all the gold we need, it's time to craft some golden apples and cure some zombie villagers. Once that finishes, we can give these villagers a job and start trading with them. The job each villager gets is determined by their station. There are 13 different stations in normal Minecraft, but for us, only 7 of them can be made using the limited resources at our disposal. Having a look through all of the trades available now, there are some damn cool ones. The toolsmith might be the most important, since they sell enchanted diamond tools. We can even enchant them further by using the books sold by the librarian. There's also a bunch of cool smaller trades like campfires, cake, glass and lanterns. Now that we have a good source of emeralds, we can even go back to the wandering trader and have a look at some of their items like sand, cactus and buckets of fish. It's also worth pointing out that a lot of the items in the SkyBlock starting kit are sold by the wandering trader, like sugarcane, the melon seeds and the sea pickle. Sure, some of the villagers are missing, but we can still work to get most of the items they sell through other means. Like even the diamond armor. If you go through enough zombies, it's possible to get it to drop. It might take a while, but that's kind of the theme we're going with here. Now, you've probably noticed which blocks we aren't able to get. I said there were a few missing things during the comparison with SkyBlock, and yeah, they're pretty big omissions. The first omission from SkyBlock being the mycelium, which, Far more importantly, we'll never get any lava or obsidian. This means no cobblestone generator, so no furnaces, dispensers, pistons, or anything else that requires cobblestone. We'll also never be able to build a portal and travel to the nether. Maybe someday Mojang will let a lava bucket trade to one of the villagers, please. But regardless, it's still possible to make so much happen from just a single block of grass. So, as a final showing, I've put together a little demo of some of the things we can do using our limited block palette. Hopefully this should show that we can still do a lot, despite missing cobblestone and a few other things. So I built a typical base of someone who might have spent the time and completed this challenge. Coming in on the left we have an aquarium. All the stuff here is sold by the wandering trader and it's pretty easy to get. Then on the right we have the light switch. Since we don't have cobblestone and can't make levers, we'll have to emulate its functionality using a button. For those of you who are into redstone, this is a T-flip-flop. Redstone gets a little complex when you can't use repeaters, comparators, hoppers, pistons, any of that, but this is how redstone used to work before all those things were introduced. For example, this thing over here is what repeaters used to look like before Mojang added them as an actual block. And then, coming down the hallway, we have the Iron Golem farm. This is a simple design based on one by Voltrox. It spawns golems outside the bounds sometimes, but it's just a proof of concept, and it produces a lot of iron. Then, at the ends of the hallway, we have an items showcase. This is the best gear we can make using our limited resources, and to be honest, it's not that far off SkyBlock, or normal Minecraft for that matter. And then there's the outside section, which covers all the miscellaneous stuff that we couldn't show off before. There's quite a bit of cool stuff out here like name tags, saddles, horse armor, pumpkins, melons, and bees. I even made an artificial beach. This might seem like a random inclusion, but it's actually really important. Assuming this fake beach was in a real beach biome, it's possible that turtles could spawn and drop their eggs. And these turtle eggs are actually part of the SkyBlock starting kit, the final item we haven't covered. So yeah, we seriously can get almost everything we can in normal SkyBlock with just one block of grass. It might take a few dozen days, but it's possible. So that about concludes what we can do with just one block of grass. But there is one more thing I want to talk about. About 9 years back, I kinda made a survival map called the One Block Survival. You spawned in on a single block, just like what we've been through, except this time it was bedrock instead of grass, meaning there was nowhere to spawn passive mobs and nowhere to progress whatsoever. Yep, this map really exists, and despite how much it makes me cringe, it's still up on Minecraft forums. The map's even gone through a few updates, the first one being where I explained the joke on a sign, and why did I do that? The second update was to make a real map out of it, but it wasn't the first. I don't know how I'm going to relate this old dumb map I made to this video, but it's been pretty cool to see this joke of a map from 9 years ago turn into still a joke of a video. But I guess at least this time, the joke was slightly more fun to get explained. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. It's been absolute hell to make this thing, and I really hope someone out there gets something from it. And maybe someday Mojang will let us trade for lava. Cheers.